Hi there, this is Vic Marley from CollabCert. I'm just taking a few moments away from my vacation here in Lake Tahoe on the California-Nevada border. Hopefully during this video I don't get eaten by a bear or attacked by a coyote. I should be okay. I'm on a raised deck, so don't worry, I'll be okay, I'll survive. Anyway, all kidding aside, in this video I'm going to be talking about Cisco Meeting Server, which is a very important topic on both the version 2 and the version 3 blueprint. Remember, the version 3 blueprint goes live in February 2020 and it has identical topics to version 2, just a software upgrade. So in version 2, CCI Cloud version 2, the version of Cisco Meeting Server is 2.2.9, and in version 3 it's going to be whatever the latest version is at the time. So it might be 2.6 or something beyond that. And I don't think it changes too much from version to version. So this video is very much applicable regardless which blueprint you're studying for. Anyhow, let's move on. We've got 3 deployment models that we could be working with. And the first one is single combined. And this means basically everything is in one box. Every component of CMS is in one box. WebBridge, CoreBridge, database, Xmpp Server, everything's in one box. Single combined. And that's what we're going to be focusing on throughout the duration of this video. That's what you can expect to face in terms of the configuration of the lab exam. The other 2 deployment models, single edge. Basically you have a turn server, which is ultimately a reverse proxy outside clients, WebRTC clients, reverse proxy into the corporate network, is on a separate server. Also the web bridge is on a separate server, so that you have a CMS that's separate containing turn, SIP edge, web bridge, and that's typically placed on a DMZ, and every other component is on the inside. The third deployment model is most likely the one you'll use in real life, and this is the scalable and resilient deployment model. And this is, as the name suggests, got scalability and resiliency or redundancy throughout. Every component has redundancy, so you have at least you have more than one core bridge, more than one web bridge, more than one WebRTC, WebAdmin, and so on and so forth. So you can have this deployment model where you've got, if a core bridge goes down, another one takes over, and you can do that in edge or in a centralized deployment model. So we're going to focus on the single combined, as I just mentioned, and hopefully you gain some knowledge on how to troubleshoot as well. Anyhow, without further ado, let's take a look a bit closer at the CMS. Okie dokie, I've moved inside, so hopefully you can hear me a little bit more clearly. No background gusts of wind or bears attacking me or coyotes to worry about. So let's now take a look at my agenda for this video. As I mentioned already, the deployment models, we're going to be then looking at certificates and certificate templates and taking a peek at our Active Directory. You need to import your users from Ldap. So I'm going to be using Microsoft 2012 R2 server with Active Directory on. We're going to take a look at, throughout this video, naturally stumble across the CLI, which is called MMP in the world of CMS, multi-management processor, or some management processor. Can't remember what the other M stands for. We can skip that version for now. We've also got some aspects configured by the GUI. In the single combined, you can pretty much do everything from the GUI. If you have scalable resilient, in other words, if you have a cluster of CMSs, then you've got to use the API. That's a poor attempt at a circle there, but the API is typically what you'll have to use in real world. Single combined, you can use the GUI for most things. We're going to then wrap up by having test calls between WebRTC clients, and then we'll enable chat between those clients. And finally, we'll take a look at different types of spaces, owner spaces and generic team spaces, if you like. And then we'll look at incoming call rules. So that's my agenda. Deployment models, as I mentioned, we've talked about that. We're looking at single combined server, one box, one virtual machine. And the first component I'm going to be looking at is the WebAdmin. It doesn't really matter which order you set up the components within CMS. You could do the core bridge, XMPP, web bridge first if you want. I like to get the WebAdmin up and running first because that gives me the GUI access to register the core bridge to the Xmpp server. It's just my own personal preference. So the WebAdmin is a very important component because it allows the HTTP access to the core bridge, and it also allows the REST API to be used. So the REST API, using a tool such as Postman, this is our post command, our get, our put, our delete. So these APIs are very important and especially vital when you've got multiple CMS servers in a cluster, scalable and resilient deployment model. In a single combined, you don't technically need to have the API working. You can do everything in the GUI. But I'm going to show you both. I'll show you how to do it in the GUI and also how to do it in the API as well. So one thing that makes the WebAdmin the trickiest of all the components is that if you register the core bridge as a conference bridge in Core Manager, so you got a Core Manager, media resources, you add a conference bridge. Well, you can add the Cisco meeting server core bridge as a video conference bridge. When that happens, when you do that, the Core Manager is going to be using this API interface, the WebAdmin on CMS. It does that because let's just say you had a three-party conference. Okay, I'm going to try and do a little drawing. Three-party conference between three phones registered to the Core Manager. Well, the Core Manager will create a space. I'm going to put that as CMS. The CMS is going to be the bridge that we're all connected to. So this guy and that guy are all connected to this video conference bridge, the core bridge, the CMS server. Well, the conference call is hosted in a temporary space. And this temporary space is created by the Core Manager using an API. So using this WebAdmin interface. And in order for that to happen, well, because this is a HTTPS, and we're using both client authentication and server authentication in our certificate template. That means the CMS is going to validate the Core Manager cert, and the Core Manager will validate the CMS's cert. Well, Core Manager can't validate a self-signed certificate. So this means that we have to have an external CA signed certificate. Otherwise, the Core Manager cannot trust a self-signed cert that's being presented to it by the CMS. So when you're registering the CMS as a conference bridge in Core Manager, CMS sends that certificate to Core Manager. Core Manager's got to be able to trust it. In order to trust it, it can't be a self-signed cert. Therefore, we have to have a CA signed cert, and we install the root certificate inside the Core Manager Trust Store within the UCM. Okay, so the WebAdmin is perhaps the most difficult of all the components, because it's essential that you do have a CA signed cert. We're going to be using our Active Directory, a Microsoft 2012 R2 server for that. The certificate enrollment component has been set up already, and we'll just need to specify the common name, which is going to be the FQDN of the CMS, and then the subject alternate name, which is the XMPP domain of all the users. So if I'm vic at collabcert.com, then collabcert.com will need to be in the SAN, subject alternate name. And if we had a link such as join.collabcert.com as a URL for my external guest to access a meeting or a space, then this would also need to be in the SAN. So you need to have at least probably 2 or 3 things inside our SAN, a list of URIs inside the certificate, the FQDN of the CMS, the domain of the users, and any other URL, typically something like a join URL that our external guest can use to access. So also we'll take a look at the certificate template when the time comes, but in a nutshell, this is the only aspect or the only component that we need to generate a CA signed cert. For everything else, core bridge, web bridge, Xmpp server, we can use a self-signed certificate. It's just that Core Manager can't trust a self-signed certificate. Therefore, we must have this externally signed certificate and install the root on the Core Manager Trust Store. Now I'm going to start configuring everything right now. So let's just take a break from this whiteboard and hop onto my headquarters PC. And there I've got PuTTY set up, and I'll access the MMP. Remember the MMP earlier, this here is just the CLI. Okay, the CLI. We always start off with CLI, and there we're gonna, before we move on to do anything else, we check NTP, we check the DNS server, NTP and time zone, I should say. We check the IPv4 settings, which interface we're using. Those are some of the preliminary tasks. Then we're going to look at the WebAdmin. And then at this point in time, once the WebAdmin's set up, we should be able to go to the GUI. So I've SSH'd into the CMS, and when you are not active on the command line, it's very useful to put the command syslog follow. Otherwise, it's a very aggressive timer. It keeps timing out, and you have to repeat the SSH into the CLI of the CMS, and it's a bit of a pain. So syslog follow is also very good for troubleshooting, to see what's going on. If you see any errors, if the CMS complains that there's a missing SRV record in the DNS server, for example, it will tell you right now. So very useful then, very, very useful command. Can't stress how important that is, to run this syslog follow command on the CLI. Now, to get out of there, you Control C, and I'm going to just check the NTP status, and the Ntp server has not been set, so I'll put Ntp server add, and I've got my Ntp server, the IP address there. So Ntp status, we should see, hopefully, Ntp status. Waiting. Let's do a ping 192.202.64.7 to see if that's up and running. It is. Ntp status. Okay, just took a while. This is going to work right now. Okay, that looks good. And now if we put time zone, America Los Angeles is fine. And then we are going to look at DNS, and there's no DNS server, so DNS question mark. We can add forward zone lookup. We can say for all, we can say for all domains dot. I'm going to be using the IP address 64.9, which is my internal DNS server. So we can even check, do a lookup on the A record to see if that's created. So DNS lookup, and then my FQDN. The A record should be as so. Oh, I forgot to put A in there. And we're going to be creating some SRV service location records as we go along as well. So we'll keep returning to this lookup command to verify all the other service location records have been created correctly as well. Now, we've got 4 interfaces called A, B, C, and D. So I put IPv4D, it's not configured. If I put E, it says it doesn't exist. If I put C, nothing there. B, nothing there. And A is configured, and there's the IP address. You can see some of the routes it has. The default route is this guy over here. This is the IP address, and so that's all. I'm okay with that. This will obviously be pre-configured. The license should already be installed as well, and we are in a position now where we can begin to look at the WebAdmin. So let's put WebAdmin, and currently I do have listening interface A, which is good. So for every component, you just have to make sure the listening interface is correct. So WebAdmin, if that wasn't configured correctly, you would put in WebAdmin listen A, and the port number is I'm going to use the non-default port number, and I'm going to use 8443, or you can use 445 if you want. The reason why I'm not using the default port number of 443 is because if the web bridge, my WebRTC clients, I don't want to make those guys specify the port number. When the administrator comes on the GUI, it's okay for the admin guy, somewhat technical person, to specify a port number, but not my WebRTC clients, my Chrome browser signing in or joining a meeting. So I'm going to be using 443 for web bridge and 8443 for WebAdmin, and so this is the differentiator. Incoming traffic on 8443, CMS will know it's the admin GUI side of things. So hit enter there, and then we are going to now HTTP redirect. I don't want my WebRTC clients, my users, to have to specify HTTPS. So for that reason, I'm going to be using the HTTP redirect enable on the web bridge side of things. For WebAdmin, I'm going to keep this disabled. You can't have it enabled on both. So WebAdmin HTTP redirect, I'm going to keep it as disabled. Okay, and I think that is the case right now, so that we're good there. If I go and try and enable the WebAdmin, it'll complain that there's no certificates. Certificates must be configured. Every component, you've got to configure certificates. In every other aspect of CMS, self-signed certificates will be good enough in our single combined deployment model, except for this particular component, as I just mentioned earlier, registering to a conference bridge as a conference bridge to Core Manager. So I'm now going to generate the certificate signing request, the CSR. So let's put PKI question mark. And so here I'm going to be putting in PKI CSR. Now the base name, I'm just going to call it CMS. And the common name, this will be added to the list in the SANs, hqcms.cci.collabcert.com. So that should always be the FQDN of the server, the A record if you like. And then subject, and this is all case sensitive. Alt, the A and the N there are in caps. And so the first SAN here should be the Xmpp, the domain of the users. So cci.collabcert.com in my case. And then without any spaces, put a comma. And I'm going to be using to actually sign in. I don't want to be putting the IP address of the CMS. I don't want to be putting in the FQDN. I want to put a more user-friendly link, a URL. So join.cci.collabcert.com. So there's 3 URIs that will be present in the SAN, and I'll check that when I create the certificate. For now, we can see that the CMS, the private key and the CSR have been generated. Now I need a way to take this off the CMS and put it on my Windows box over here, and then I'm going to be using web enrollment on the Microsoft CA. So you, in the lab environment, you probably have WinSCP. You can use that. If you don't have that, then for sure you'll have PuTTY, the PuTTY SFTP. Let me just make that a little bit bigger. Oh, before I move on, let's just very quickly put syslog follow. Okay. Over here then, let's just make that a bit bigger so we can see it a bit more clearly. Okay, that should do the trick. And I'm going to navigate to the downloads folder. And then I'm going to use PuTTY SFTP, PSFTP, get inside the CMS. And this is my username and password of the CMS. And then if I do a ls, you can see that cms.csr is there. So let's do a get. And then CMS CSR, certificate signing request, and the syslog follow tells you what's going on there. At this point in time, I'm going to open up my Firefox. I'm going to navigate to my CertServe. CertServe is when you've got the Microsoft Certificate Authority set up with web enrollment. You can then do it from the web browser like I'm doing right now. This is the administrator credentials on my Microsoft 2012 R2 server that is running the Certificate Authority. And over here then, we can, well, let's just open up my CSR, which is in the downloads folder because of my command prompt. Remember, I navigated, did a CD to downloads. So in downloads, I should see the CSR. Let's just open that with Notepad++. Let's do a Control A, Control C, and then let's do a request certificate over here, and then we can Control V it. Give that a second. I'm going to talk about certificate templates as well. Okay, let's then Control V, and I'm going to be using this one that's already set up, Client and Server Web Authentication. So for now, let's just go along with me right now and create that certificate. When we come to download it, select base64 encoded and save to file. Now what that'll do, it will create a cert new. I'm going to just rename that to whatever my base name was, CMS. And then if we open that certificate up right now, we will be able to see what URIs are in the SAN, the subject alternate names, and we should see those three things that we defined. One was in the CN, the FQDN of the server, HQ CMS, CCI collab cert, then we've got the join, and then we've got just the XMPP domain as well. So if we go to details down here, well, first of all, take a look at the subject validity. Sometimes if your DNS server has the wrong time or is in a time zone ahead, it will create the certificate with a time that's in the future. So it won't be valid until, maybe 8 hours time. So right now, look at my time in the bottom right, it's 2:37 p.m. here in California, and the certificate was valid from 2:25. Okay, I'm okay with that, that's good. I think my PC here's not quite got the correct time. So the valid from is good. And then the valid to, well, this is good as well. So the certificate won't expire. Really be shame if your certificate expired when they come to grade your lab exam. So just make sure the valid to has a bit of wiggle room there, at least maybe 3 or 4 days, maybe hopefully more than a week, and you should be good to go. Let's take a look at the subject alternate names, and inside here those three URIs that are defined. This was the FQDN of the server, the XMPP domain name, and then the join URI, which is a more user-friendly link. I don't have to have this join. I could have just accessed the server using the FQDN or the IP address of CMS, specifying the right port number, but just commonly done where you have a user-friendly URI, and this is what the join is. So there's my certificate created. Now, sorry, I closed it down too soon. Let's just open that up again. One of the things we need to check is that we need to have client TLS web authentication as well as server TLS web authentication. So let's just wait for that to open up again, and let's go to details, and then let's get down there and check, where would that be? Enhanced key usage. We must see server and client as I've defined there, which is great. Now if I go to my internal DNS server, and this is my Microsoft CA, and then I go to certificate authority, then inside here my templates, if I go to templates and click manage, how I created this client server, which is that one there, is I just went to the web server and I duplicated that one. I'm just going to call this something like test in a second. Request handling, it just takes me a second to find out where this is. Extensions, key usage, yeah, if we hit edit, no, not there. Okay, application policies here, if we click edit, then we can add client authentication just like that. So we have server and client. Okay, so just to recap there, when you take a copy of web server, right click, duplicate web server, and then go to extensions, application policies, and then add client authentication. I'll tell you what this is doing in a second. Once you've got client there, then you would give it a name. What do you give it a name? Under general, you give it here, just whatever you want to call it. So let's just go ahead and do that actually. I'm just going to call it test. I'm going to call it test. I'm going to call it Tahoe, in case test already exists. I don't think it does, but Tahoe. And the extensions then, let's click add and then put client authentication and apply that, and there is my certificate template. Now we need to close this down, and then we go, actually I didn't need to, we go to new certificate template to issue, because right now you don't see Tahoe in the list here of valid certificate templates that I can be using. So we need to publish that one we just created. So let's go to new certificate template to issue, and then let's find that Tahoe certificate template. There it is, and we can see it there, and we are good to go. Now if we go back to my web enrollment, now I've got my certificate already, but let's just pretend I'm going to create another one. Top right, I clicked home there, I'm going to go through, pretend, create a certificate again and see if I see that Tahoe certificate template as one I can use. So request certificate, advanced. Let's just paste that in, even though I'm not going to really create it. Okay, there it is. So I won't bother going in and doing it. So that's, if your certificate template is missing, you would have to go and create your certificate template, copy the web server, add client, give it a name, and then you publish it, and then you can use it. You should be able to see it from the pull down here on the web browser. So the final thing is we need to have the root certificate. So CMS won't trust the certificate, Core Manager won't trust the certificate unless we have the root certificate of the entity that created that cert, which is this guy, the root of the Microsoft CA. So let's just download CA certificate, base64, and then download CA. Click OK, and then give that a name. I'm going to give it the name of root, and we're going to have to install this inside our UCM when we come to register the conference bridge. So we've got the certificate created with the correct information in there. We've got the root. Now's the time to go to PSFTP. Oh, it has timed out. Not a problem. Just up cursor to go back in there. And then we're going to be doing a put. Remember, we're in the right folder, downloads, and everything's downloaded here to the downloads folder here. So it should be able to just be a put, and then cms.cer, and then put root.cer. And we can now exit this PSFTP. We're done with that. I'm gonna just minimize my command prompt there, minimize that. I'll keep this up just in case I made a mistake. And at that point in time, let's go back to my MMP, my command line of the CMS, WebAdmin question mark. So here's where we're going to do a WebAdmin certs, and then put cms.key, cms.cer, and then the cert bundle. This is the root certificate of the entity that has created my cert, which is the root. And then when we enable it, we have success. If there was a problem, it's most likely the valid from, the valid to. Either the valid from, the time hasn't passed yet, or the valid to, the time has already passed. So be very careful then, take a look at the time on your Microsoft Certificate Authority server and make sure it's the correct time if there was a problem. Now if we go over to our Firefox browser and HTTPS 192.100.64.31, which is my CMS IP address. Remember, we have to specify the port number. We should see this admin GUI appear. Okay, so we can get in there, and this is admin CCI collab is my password, and we're in the GUI. So that's a good check. Can't really do too much right now. Let's return to the next component. I'm going to be looking at the Xmpp server. Now, Cisco have announced that the Xmpp server is going to be removed as a piece of software in the CMS over the course of time. But for now, the Xmpp server is essential for handling all the registration and authentication. So you actually have the core bridge registering as well to the Xmpp server too. So we are going to set up the Xmpp server, the listening interface, and then we're going to go and do something with the core bridge. I'll show you when the time comes. We're going to actually create the credential of the core bridge. If I go back to the GUI over here in the general, and over here I need to register the core bridge to the Xmpp server. So the core bridge name over here and the password, well, this credential here has to be created within the CLI using the Xmpp server. So the bullet there about create credential is referencing how we register the core bridge to the Xmpp server. So think of the Xmpp server as being at the top of the hierarchy. Everything is registering, authenticating to the Xmpp server. So let's go and get that configured. Okay, so as I mentioned before, we can use a self-signed certificate for all the other components now that we've got the WebAdmin set up. And to generate the self-signed certificate, PKI question mark and we've got this command here, PKI self-signed, and then let's just put our base name in. I'm going to just call it self and do a PKI list, and we can see it's generated self.crt and self.key. I think I put the wrong command in earlier in this video and deleted it. I accidentally put PKI CSR. Don't put that in, it's PKI self-signed. So ignore this self.csr, you won't see that if you put the command in correctly first time. So just remember self.key and self.crt. Take note of the different suffix there, CRT. When we created the certs within Microsoft CA, then it's called CER. Okay, let's go to Xmpp, question mark. Very first thing then is the listening interface is going to be A, and then we've got, well, if we try and put the certs in now, Xmpp certs, and self.key, and then self.crt. That's there, fine. And then we can do a Xmpp enable, and there's a failure. Xmpp server failure to complete domain. Okay, I've got to put the domain name in first. So Xmpp domain. This is just going to be the domain name of our users. So my users are HQ1 at cciclabcert.com, HQ2 at cciclabcert.com. So I'm going to put cciclabcert.com. And now if we try and enable it, it should work. Okay, that's great. We're going to return here to create that credential I just mentioned moments ago. When we try and add the Xmpp core bridge, we create the credential here, but first we need to set up the core bridge. So let's go to, in fact, we don't need to do that. Let's go in right now and do that. Xmpp core bridge add, CFB CMS. And you see it's created this credential. I'm going to need that when I come to register it to the GUI over here. But first of all, let me complete some of the core bridge tasks now. So if I put core bridge, and it's going to be listening interface is the first thing we need to do. So core bridge, listen A, and the certs, self.key, self.crt, and then we can do a restart, and then we can return back to the core bridge over here. So we've already created it. If you did forget the credential, put Xmpp core bridge list. So this name is important here inside the GUI here. So let's just paste that in. But it doesn't really matter what you put inside the core manager. The domain name is my Xmpp domain name. I just specified that. The server address. Let's come back to that one in a second. And here's the secret password, which the credential we've created inside the CLI using the Xmpp core bridge command. So let's specify that over here. And let's just submit that. Now, when I hit submit, I'm going to put in syslog follow and then hit submit right now. Don't save that. And did that really take it? Because I may have been timed out. Let's go in to configure general and see if that's there. I have a feeling it didn't take any of those commands yet. CFB, CMS. I'm leaving the server address blank. I want to demonstrate something that's going to be happening in the background. And that's the server address here is where is my Xmpp server? Where should this core bridge register to? Which address? I'm leaving it blank because if you had scalability and redundancy, multiple Xmpp servers, you'd have 1, 3, or 5, at least 50% must be redundant. So you can have 3, 2 are active and 1 is idle. So as an example, so you can't specify multiple IP addresses here. So you're relying then with scalability and resiliency, you're relying on a service location record, which is the Xmpp component service location record. You don't have to remember that when you're configuring it, because if you leave it blank and hit submit, with the syslog follow, it will tell you what it's trying to do. It says here, I can't find underscore Xmpp dash component dot underscore TCP dot domain name, cciclabcert.com. It's looking for this component service location record, and the port number here is 553. Okay, so when you come to register the core bridge to the Xmpp server, when you're going inside the GUI and you're specifying it, if you have resiliency, you can't statically define an IP address. It will use, to register to either one of those, it will use a DNS server and it will do a service location lookup. And we would need the underscore Xmpp dash, let me just do that again, underscore Xmpp dash component dot underscore TCP dot domain. And the port number here, if we create, so let's just say we had 1.1.1.1, 1.1.1.2 and .3. We'd have 3 service location records. You can prioritize or just have them at equal weight, equal priority, but the port number would have to be 5223. That's the port number that's going to be used. So you have to remember then to create however many Xmpp servers you have, you create 3 service location records and with port number 5223. In my case, single combined server, I don't need to have that because there's only one server. So here I can put the IP address in. So that'll be the easiest way for me to do it, as opposed to creating that service location lookup, the other SRV record. Okay, and then it looks like it may have registered. It says Xmpp component connected over here. Let's go in on the GUI and check it here as well. On general, you can see that the call bridge has registered for 14 seconds now. So that looks good. With single combined, you don't need to create the Xmpp component. We will be creating the Xmpp client. That's mandatory, but we'll come to that later on. So I've created the Xmpp server in the command line, and I've gone and set up the call bridge. Call bridge that's the main thing inside CMS. That's handling all the spaces, all the participants in a space. It's sorting out the audio and the video, all the call control and media processing. It's all taken care of by the call bridge. And obviously in a single combine, we use self-signed cert. So that's self.key and self.crt is absolutely sufficient for both call bridge and Xmpp. So let's go back and take a look at, did I put syslog follow on there? Yes, I did, which is good. Let's just go to call bridge and type enter, and that should tell you if it's running. I think it is. Did I make sure it's running? Yes, I did. I did a call bridge restart. Okay, so call bridge is set up, Xmpp set up. The next thing is the web bridge. And in web bridge, we are also going to listen on interface A. But remember, this is my Chrome browser or whatever browser is capable of handling web real-time communications traffic. We are not going to make those users specify the port number. So for that reason, I'm going to put 443, which is the default. And notice how when we set up WebAdmin, we didn't put a colon. We just put in A and a space and then 8443. For the web bridge, this is handling my WebRTC client or the CMA client, the client traffic. We are putting a colon in there. It says here interface colon port number. So this is the default port number then. And that's very important. And now I don't want my users to specify HTTPS. So I'm going to enable HTTP redirect. So then I can just put in the IP address of CMS now, and it will redirect me to HTTPS and go to the web bridge. And in terms of the certs, same as before. Self.key, self.crt. And I think, this trust command here, this is vital. We should be able to trust the call bridges certificate. Otherwise, the join button will be missing. Let me just show you that right now. Let me enable that right now, and it tells you there's a warning there, no trust store configured. What's the impact of that? If I just put the IP address of CMS or the FQDN, not the port number. I don't want to put 8443, just 64.31, and then without any HTTPS, no port number, it will redirect me to the web bridge. So this is how CMS differentiates the traffic from the WebAdmin, which is the port number there, 8443. With no port number, then it's the web bridge. And this is the sign-in page. Notice there's no join button there, and that's because the trust store's not been set up properly. We need to trust whatever the core bridge certificate is. Okay, so the core bridge is using self.cert. So we need to put in web bridge trust self.cert, CRT. It says got to disable it first. Let's go and disable that. And then let's go in and enable it. No warning this time. If we refresh the browser. Okay, maybe I need to set up one more thing. So let's just try that again. Okay, I think we need to set up a... We'll come back to that. Okay, we'll come back to that. Let me put this syslog follow. The bit that I'm missing, the reason why the join button's not there is I need to do one more thing. So the trust bundle, so the web bridge, come back to database. The web bridge is WebRTC client traffic is being handled by the web bridge. So in a single edge, this web bridge is on a separate CMS server in the DMZ. So this web bridge then is handling the WebRTC client, or it could be CMA as well, the client, the Cisco meeting application. Okay, that traffic's coming in, and we need to have established a connection to the call bridge. We need to make the call bridge aware of the web bridge. Think of it in multiple servers or in single edge. The call bridge and the web bridge are different boxes. So we need to, in fact, tell the call bridge where is the web bridge and vice versa. So this bit is missing right now. In a single box, it doesn't really make sense because there is only one IP address we're dealing with, but just imagine that you're using a different deployment model. So that's the bit we're missing right now. And we can add this using API. This is going to be the web bridges API, or we can do this from the GUI as well. So let me just do this from the GUI because I don't really want to go into the API right now. So given that it's a single combined server, let me go in on the GUI, and over here in not Active Directory, under General, we can put in, so this would be our URI. Well, this one here is just going to be the same as my Xmpp domain. And this one over here is going to be the URI of the call bridge. So HTTPS. And now with the syslog follow, we should see some output being generated here. And it says here, web bridge link connection established. Okay, now if you've got multiple servers, you have to do that from the API, because obviously here there I've only specified one call bridge. And so with the API, when I go to Postman, I will remove that configuration from the GUI and repeat that within the API using Postman. But for now, it says it's connected. The web bridge and the call bridge are talking with each other, and this means then we can have the join button appear. Okay, now we can't actually join, or can't actually sign in yet. I haven't got any users, but that's a critical thing to see before you really move on. Now I skipped over database. Unlike some of my earlier videos where I thought you needed to do something on the database, on a single CMS, the call bridge can use the database by default. You don't need to activate any of the database certs. Don't need to generate the certs. You don't need to do anything with the database commands. It's already enabled by default. So you can pretty much ignore the database component unless you have multiple CMS servers, scalable and resilient deployment model. But the database is there to read information from the call bridge, space participants, etc. So it's very important when you've got multiple call bridges, but in a single node, then it's okay to do. There's nothing you need to do here. So if I go over here and look on the CMS the database. So the database will have specific requirements. When you are having multiple CMS nodes, you would have to have a client certificate, which has just got common name Postgres, and then the server certificate can be the same thing that we've used for the WebAdmin. But this client certificate is a special cert that needs to be created, CN:/Postgres. But we don't need to do any of these things here because they're all related to having multiple CMSs, multiple core bridges and databases, so nothing you need to do. So this database command you can ignore from now on in the lab exam, because in the situation you have a single node, it's redundant. Okay, so that was easy. And the next thing is the big one. It's how do we import our users from Ldap? And this is where I'm going to do this initially using the web GUI. And then I'll show you how we do this on the API as well. So let's go on the web GUI and let's first of all put in syslog follow. And on the web GUI over here, we can go down to configuration and then Active Directory. And over here, this is the IP address of my Active Directory, 389 or 636. 636 means you're using secure, 389 is not secure. Now the username, this has got to be the full distinguished name. So you can't just put in administrator here. We are going to have to go to my internal DNS. Now if you go down here and just type in some of my other videos, I put in, I use PowerShell, but I'm just going to type in ADSI edit. So ADSI edit is a really cool tool. You open that up and right click, connect to the local server, just click OK. And then we can go inside of that, and in our users we can go to administrator. Let's go to right click and go to properties and just type in distinguished name or dist. Go there and then we can copy that right there. Let's return back to my headquarters PC, and that will be my username, and the password is whatever that Microsoft 2012 server password. Okay, and that's the first thing. That's our server. Did I get the? Yes, I did. All right, so that's the Ldap server defined, and you can do that using the Ldap servers API, which I'll come to later on. Now, where are my users? My HQ1, HQ2. These are all pre-configured inside my Active Directory. So I want to say where are my users? Well, the users are also in the same place inside users. You can see HQ1 here, and HQ2 and 3 are over there as well. So if we go to one of those users, whoops, right click properties, and we can just go to distinguish name, take everything except for the actual first name, last name. So let's just take in everything minus the 3HQ part there. And that's our base DN. Base distinguished name. And we could have just got it from there as well. From the administrator here, we could have just copied from there. The filter, now the filter, I don't want to, let's just leave the filter empty right now and see what happens. We'll come back to that. Filter is going to be empty. Now, one thing we're going to be doing is, in Ldap, in CMS, the world of CMS, we need to create these accounts. So my account is going to be HQ1, for example, at cci.collabcert.com. Now, in the Active Directory, okay, I can specify this bit manually. I can put in the at and then the host portion over there. That bit I will enter. But how do I get the username here? And this field here, typically in Microsoft AD, is the SAM account name, SAMA, and that's in caps. And that's in caps. Okay, this will contain, it looked like the S, the initial S there is in caps, but that's not. So this is typically where the username is stored in this field here. So let's go to my internal DNS. I'm in HQ3. Let's just right click there as an example. And let's just type in SAMA. It'll take you there straight away. And SAMA, let's just double click on that. And this is how we can grab the field that we're going to be using. So what we're going to be doing is in our filter, I will be using this as a filter. And again, I said I was going to be come back to that. So let me just come back to that shortly. But this is going to be my username field. So I'm going to put that as a username. And I need to envelope that in because I'm not actually using not querying the value. I'm looking at the value of it. So I'm going to envelope that in $signs. So the value of the SAM account name, which is HQ1 or HQ2, HQ3. Then I'm going to put in at cci.collabs.com, whatever my Xmpp domain was. In terms of the display name, this is just a more user-friendly rather than the username, a user-friendly, a first name, last name, for example. And this is generally the CN field, the common name, but we need to check that's populated. So let's just put in CN. And this is case sensitive as well. So just remember to put CN in caps. And you can see here the first name's 3, the last name's HQ. So $CN is the name. Now if I do that and hit, at this point in time I can hit submit. And then let's sync now and see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen. Users. Okay, I think we do need to have a filter. Let's see what's gone on there. It says Ldap sync operation starting. And it's saying record CN, okay, abandoning sync, blank JID. The JID is my account name. The Jabber ID, not the Jabber we know, but the open source Jabber. This is just basically my Xmpp account name. Basically saying I can't create the account. Okay, so we do need to have some kind of filter there. Let me just make it very simple then. Go down here and let's put in this field here equals star. Let's see what happens then. Sync now. Okay, it looks like more stuff happened there. Okay, so now let's go and check what users there are. And you see it creates everything inside users, including some groups and the administrator account, guest account. So I really don't want to have everything there. This is why it's important to have a filter that makes more sense. Now my filter then, my users I want to import are HQ1, HQ2, HQ3. So I can put in HQ star. That might be a much neater filter. Let's hit submit and sync now. When we sync now, it'll delete everything. It'll do a complete sync. So let's just take a look at what users I have, and voila, we have the 3 users we want. So SAM account name equals HQ star is a really good filter. Some of my other videos, I actually move those users into a separate group, and then I'm just saying let's put a filter on that particular group. And so that'd be maybe more of a real world thing, but in terms of my simple lab environment, SAM account name equals HQ star is wonderful. Now I'm going to try and sign in. On my internal DNS, I've got a Chrome browser, and I'm going to go to let's just put the IP address in of CMS. If there was some kind of more user-friendly URL, then we need to create the A record. In fact, let's just go ahead and do that now. We'll create the A record. Tools, DNS, and then over here we're going to have a new A record, join, and this is going to be my Cisco meeting server. Now we may have to do a flush DNS. Remember that lookup command, DNS. Let's just do a DNS flush. Okay, and now we're going to be, rather than having to put the IP address in, let's just make it more user friendly. join.cci.collabcert.com, and it should redirect me to HTTPS. Okay, there it is. Advanced, proceed, and this should give me my sign-in page. Remember, this was part of one of the subject alternate names. Okay, let's sign in. HQ1 at ccicollabcert.com. Cisco is the password, and it's failed. Now, the syslog follow will give you a massive hint why it's not working, because when you come to sign in, the CMS is looking for this this service location record on the DNS server. So we have to go in and create _Xmpp client, and that port number is 5222. So when we come to sign in on the web bridge is doing this lookup of a service location record, and that's missing right now. So let's go back to our DNS server and let's create a service location record. And let's just paste that in there. The protocol was TCP, the port number 5222, and the host is my CMS. And let's hit OK there. Done. Now we may have to do another flush. Let's just see if we do or not. HQ1 at ccicollabcert.com. Cisco. Sign in. Yeah, it looks like we have to do a flush DNS again. Let's go in and do that. Third time's a charm. Let's try again. Okay, now it's signing in. So we are also going to go and sign in one of the other users over here. HQ2, shall we say? And he's signed in too. So now we can do a new call, or we can go to people, type in 1HQ, make a call to that guy. And we can answer over here. Now I've got no camera, so we don't really see much going on. But from the CMS, I should be able to see that there is a call, status calls, active call. Okay, that looks good. Notice then, if I come to chat over here, it says you can't send messages to this conversation. So we're going to have to fix that. We'll come back to that. For now, let me just end that call. And one thing if we go to HQPC, we should notice then that if I go down here, under configuration, spaces, there are no spaces. I imported those users, but the user did not have an automatically generated space. I kind of used to call it co-space. And we're going to continue talking about spaces and how to enable chat and inbound call rules in a second video, part 2 of this series of videos. So go and hunt that down and continue watching from there. Thank you.